The message arrived on a quiet Tuesday morning. Admiral Dae-hyun stood in the command center of the United Earth Defense Fleet, watching the holographic display flicker to life. Representatives from 40 different alien species filled the screen, their faces showing the same expression. Fear, Ambassador Theron of the Keltarian Concordat spoke first. His voice was calm, but his hand shook. The Seltharians had lived for 10,000 years, building an empire that stretched across 50 star systems. Nothing scared them. Until now, they are coming, Theron said. The Veskari swarm. They arrive every 50,000 years. They consume everything. Every planet. Every moon. Every living thing. We have 3 months to evacuate. Dae-hyun listened as other species added their voices. The Draknari warlords, famous for their warrior culture, announced they would retreat to the outer nebula. The Minari traders, who knew every corner of the galaxy, were already packing their ships. Even the ancient predecessor archives confirmed it. The swarm could not be stopped, only survived. The solution was simple. Everyone would leave. Jump to dark space between galaxies, wait for the swarm to pass, return in 100 years when it was safe. 94% survival rate, the council calculated. Acceptable losses. Dae-hyun turned off the display. Around him, his officers stood silent. Captain Minji, the youngest captain in the fleet, crossed her arms. Dr. Hana adjusted her glasses, already thinking. Lieutenant Ji-won, fresh from patrol duty, looked confused. Sergeant Borum, who had fought in every major ground battle for 15 years, showed no expression at all. So we run, Minji said quietly. Dae-hyun did not answer immediately. He walked to the window overlooking Earth. Blue and green wrapped in white clouds. 400 billion humans lived down there. Another 50 billion scattered across Mars, Europa, Titan, and a dozen colony worlds. Humanity was young compared to other species. They had only reached the stars 200 years ago. But this was home. The vote happened 3 days later. The United Earth Assembly gathered in Geneva. Representatives from every nation, every colony, every space station. The question was simple. Do we evacuate with the other species or do we stay? The debate lasted 18 hours. Some argued for survival. Better to live in exile than die here. Others demanded they fight. Earth was not negotiable. Mars was not negotiable. Humanity did not abandon its home. Dae-hyun watched from the gallery. He had already made his decision, but this was not his choice alone. This belonged to everyone. The final vote came at dawn. 67% chose to stay. 33% chose to leave, and humanity honored both choices. Those who wanted to evacuate were helped onto alien refugee ships. No shame, no judgment. Just goodbye and good luck. For the rest, preparation began immediately. Dae-hyun organized the defense in layers. The outer colonies would be the first line. Not to hold forever, but to slow the enemy. Buy time, learn their tactics. Every day counted. Dr. Hana set up research stations on every major world. She pulled data from the ancient archives, studying what little information existed about the Veskari. Most species just ran. Nobody had ever tried to fight them seriously. That meant no one knew their weaknesses. Captain Minji trained the fleet in new tactics. Traditional space combat would not work against an enemy this massive. They needed to be faster, smarter, unpredictable. Hit and run. Strike and fade. Make every shot count because they would not get many chances. Lieutenant Ji-won formed special squadrons of volunteer pilots. They called themselves Ghost Squadron. Their mission was simple and deadly. Get behind enemy lines. Destroy supply chains. Make the swarm bleed for every inch of space. Sergeant Borum turned colony worlds into fortresses. Civilians trained alongside soldiers. Everyone learned to shoot, to build defenses, to survive. The message was clear. If the swarm wanted these worlds, they would have to take them from very angry humans. Across the galaxy, the great exodus continued. Massive ships carried entire civilizations into the void. The Keltharians packed their libraries and museums. The Draknari loaded their warriors onto clan ships, their honor heavy with shame. The Minari filled cargo holds with everything they could carry. Ambassador Theron came to Earth one last time before his people left. He met with Dae-hyun in private. The alien's face showed genuine sadness. "This is foolish," Theron said. "You will all die." "Maybe," Dae-hyun replied. "But we will die standing." Theron shook his head. "I wish I could understand you. My people are ancient. We have survived 1,000 catastrophes by knowing when to bend, when to hide, when to wait. You are so young. You do not understand how dangerous pride is. Daehyun smiled without humor. This is not pride, Ambassador. This is home. You have 50 star systems. If you lose one, you still have 49. We have one Earth, one Mars, one chance. If we run now, we lose who we are. The ambassador left without another word. 3 months passed quickly. Industrial production shifted completely to war. Factories that made civilian ships now made warships. Farms increased output to feed armies. Schools taught tactics alongside mathematics. Humanity prepared for extinction. On the last day before the swarm's expected arrival, Daehyun broadcast a message across all human channels. People watched from Earth, from Mars, from stations and ships in distant colonies. He spoke simply. We stand alone now. Every other species has left. They think we are fools. Maybe they are right. But I would rather be a fool who fights than a coward who runs. Tomorrow the enemy comes. We will not defeat them easily. Many of us will die, but we will fight. For Earth, for our children, for the simple truth that some things are worth dying for. The broadcast ended. No dramatic music. No fancy graphics. Just an old soldier telling the truth. That night, Minji found him on the observation deck. The captain stood beside her admiral, looking at the stars. Do you think we can win? She asked. Daehyun considered the question. Honestly? No, but I think we can make them remember us. I think we can show them that humans do not surrender. And maybe, if we are very lucky and very clever, we can hurt them enough that they decide we are not worth the trouble. Minji nodded. That is enough then. Across the galaxy, the last refugee ships jumped to safety. Star systems went dark as civilizations fled. Ancient empires, proud warriors, wise traders, all running from the coming storm. Only humanity remained. Only humanity stood ready. And when dawn came, sensors detected something at the edge of the solar system. Something massive. Something hungry. Something that had consumed 1,000 worlds and expected this one to be no different. The Veskari swarm had arrived. Daehyun looked at his crew. Captain Minji checked her weapons. Dr. Hana reviewed her research. Lieutenant Jiwon climbed into her fighter. Sergeant Borum loaded her rifle. All stations, the admiral said calmly. Prepare for combat. Show them what humans do when backed into a corner. The war had begun. The Veskari ships did not look like ships at all. They looked like nightmares grown in the dark between stars. Organic hulls stretched for kilometers, pulsing with sickly light. Thousands of them emerged from subspace at the edge of human territory, blotting out the stars. New Horizon Colony detected them first, a small mining world on the outer rim, home to 12,000 people. The colony administrator sent one message before communications went dark. They are here. God help us. 72 hours later, New Horizon was gone. Not destroyed, consumed. The planet's surface stripped of all organic matter, leaving only bare rock. 12,000 people vanished as if they had never existed. Admiral Daehyun watched the sensor data with cold fury. This was the enemy. Not soldiers with guns and tactics, a force of nature that ate worlds. But even forces of nature could be studied, understood, and maybe stopped. The swarm moved inward, consuming 3 more colonies in the following weeks. Millions died. Billions more fled toward the inner systems, cramming onto evacuation ships. Panic spread like fire. Maybe the other species had been right. Maybe running was the only answer. But Daehyun had not given up. He positioned the 3rd Fleet at Proxima Defense Line, a ring of military stations guarding the approach to the core systems. Captain Minji commanded the battlecruiser Indomitable, the fleet's pride. 60 warships stood ready to face an enemy that numbered in the thousands. The swarm came like a tide. Their bioships moved in perfect coordination, controlled by a single vast intelligence. Human weapons hammered them with missiles and railgun fire. The Veskari did not even slow down. Their organic armor absorbed or deflected everything. We are not hurting them, Minji reported, her voice tight with frustration. Daehyun watched his fleet die. Ship after ship fell to Veskari weapons that grew from their hulls like tumors. But the humans held their positions. Not to win, but to buy time. Every hour meant more civilians escaped. Fall back in stages, he ordered. Make them fight for every kilometer. And get me samples. I want wreckage from every Veskari ship we damage. The 3rd Fleet retreated, leaving 40% of its ships as burning wrecks. But the evacuation corridors stayed open. 5 billion civilians made it to safety, and human boarding teams recovered pieces of Veskari bioships carrying them back for study. Dr. Hana worked without sleep. Her research station on Europa became a fortress of microscopes and gene scanners. She dissected Veskari tissue, studied their cellular structure, looked for any weakness at all. For 2 weeks she found nothing. The Veskari were perfect killing machines, evolved over millions of years. Their cells regenerated faster than most weapons could damage them. Their armor was harder than military-grade steel. They did not need oxygen or warmth. They existed only to consume and grow. Then she found it. A frequency. All Veskari cells vibrated at the same resonance, like a tuning fork singing one endless note. It made them stronger, kept them connected to the swarm's hive mind. But what if that connection could be disrupted? Hana ran 17 simulations. Each one showed the same result. Hit them with the right sonic frequency and their cells would tear themselves apart. The weakness was not in their armor or weapons. It was in the very thing that made them a swarm. She called Dae-hyun at 3 a.m. He listened to her explanation, then smiled for the first time in months. "Build it," he said. "Build as many as you can. We are going to hurt these things." The first sonic weapons were crude, missiles carrying resonance generators instead of explosives. They had limited range and took time to charge. But when Lieutenant Ji-won's Ghost Squadron deployed them against a Veskari biofactory, the results were spectacular. Ji-won led 12 fighters in a stealth approach. They flew dark, no engines, coasting on momentum through the debris field. The biofactory hung in space like a diseased moon, pumping out new Veskari organisms every hour. It was lightly guarded. The swarm had never needed much defense. Ghost Squadron planted the charges directly on the factory's hull. Ji-won armed the last one herself, her hands steady despite knowing she had only minutes to escape. The timer counted down. 3 minutes. 2. 1. The resonance pulse tore through the structure. Veskari tissue shredded like wet paper. Chain reactions cascaded through every connected organism. Within seconds, the entire factory collapsed into dead matter, drifting in pieces. Ji-won's squadron scattered before Veskari defenders could respond. They lost 2 fighters, but 10 made it home. The victory broadcast spread across all human channels within hours. For the first time since the invasion began, humans had not just survived, they had won. The news reached beyond human space. In distant exile, Ambassador Theron watched the battle recordings with disbelief. "Impossible," he muttered. "No species has ever hurt the Veskari so badly. What are these humans?" Warlord Kryn saw the same recordings. The Dreknari leader sat alone in his clanship, shame burning in his chest. His people called themselves warriors. They boasted of honor and courage, but they had fled while these young humans stood and fought. Around the exile fleet, debates erupted. Other species watched humanity's desperate struggle and began to question their own choices. Should they have stayed? Could they have helped? The certainty that running was the only option started to crack. But the war was far from over. The Veskari swarm adapted quickly. Their queen, an ancient intelligence vast beyond human understanding, analyzed the defeat. She had consumed 1 million worlds across 10 million years. Loss was unfamiliar, interesting. This prey fought back. New Veskari forms emerged. Hunters designed specifically to counter human tactics. Scouts that could track stealth ships. Warriors with armor that dampened sonic weapons. The Queen devoted resources to this problem that she had never needed before. What should have been a quick harvest became a war of attrition. Humans traded space for time, lives for knowledge. Every battle taught them more about the enemy. Dr. Hana improved the sonic weapons weekly. Captain Minji developed new tactics daily. The fleet learned to hit hard and vanish before the swarm could respond. But they were losing. Slowly, inevitably, humanity's territory shrank. Colony after colony fell. The casualty counts climbed into the millions. Dae-hyun knew the mathematics. They could not win through conventional warfare. The swarm was simply too large. Late one night, Minji found him staring at tactical displays. The captain sat beside her admiral without speaking. They had known each other for 15 years. She could read his moods. "We cannot hold them," Dae-hyun said quietly. "Not with what we have. We need help or we need a miracle." Minji nodded. "Then we keep fighting until one of those happens. That is all we can do." He looked at her. "Do you regret staying?" "Never," she said without hesitation. Even if we lose, I would rather lose like this than live knowing I ran. Across human space, that sentiment echoed. Soldiers fought harder. Scientists worked faster. Civilians volunteered for anything that might help. The galaxy thought humanity was dying. They were right. But humanity was dying on its feet, with weapons in hand, making the universe remember them. And far away in exile, Warlord Kryn made a decision. He stood before his warriors and spoke the words that would change everything. We fled like cowards. We abandoned those who needed allies, no more. I am returning to fight beside the humans. Any who wish to come, follow me. Any who wish to stay, I do not blame you. But I will not spend another day running. 50,000 Draknari warriors chose to follow him. Their ships turned back toward human space, toward certain death, toward the only honorable choice they could still make. The second phase of the war had begun. 2 years. That was how long humanity had been fighting. 2 years of retreat and resistance, of victories measured in days bought and lives saved. Admiral Daehyun looked older now. His hair had gone completely gray. Lines marked his face like battle scars. Human territory had shrunk to a fraction of what it was. The outer colonies were gone. The middle colonies were contested battlegrounds. Only the inner systems remained secure, and that security was temporary. The Veskari swarm pressed closer every day, but humanity was still fighting, still adapting, still refusing to die quietly. Europa Station had become a symbol. The moon base, dug deep into ice and rock, held against 6 months of siege. Sergeant Borum commanded the defense personally. She walked the tunnels daily, checking defenses, encouraging troops, making sure civilians stayed calm. The Veskari surrounded them completely. Bioships hung in orbit like vultures. Ground organisms tried to drill through the ice. But Europa held. The defenders knew every tunnel, every trap, every way to make the enemy bleed. And they had learned to use the sonic weapons in close quarters where they were most effective. Borum stood at the main gate one morning, watching repair crews patch holes from the latest assault. A young soldier approached, barely 20 years old. He had volunteered straight from civilian life. "Sergeant," he asked nervously, "why do they keep attacking? They could just wait us out." Borum smiled grimly. "Because we annoy them. Every day we hold here is a day they cannot use these resources elsewhere. We tie down forces they need for other battles, so they keep trying to crack us open." The soldier nodded slowly. "So we are winning by not dying." "Exactly," Borum said. "Welcome to modern warfare." In space, Captain Minji pioneered new tactics. The Indomitable led raids on Veskari supply lines. She had discovered that the swarm needed resources from consumed worlds. They were not infinite. Cut off their food supply and they weakened. Minji's fleet struck at resource convoys, mining operations, and biofactories. They used hit-and-run tactics, never staying long enough for the swarm to respond in force. It was exhausting work. Her crews barely slept. But it worked. For the first time since the invasion began, the Veskari advance slowed. Lieutenant Jiwon became famous across human space. Ghost Squadron's exploits spread through military channels and civilian networks. People told stories of the pilot who flew into the heart of Veskari formations and always came back. She had destroyed 15 bioships personally, more than any other pilot. But fame meant nothing to Jiwon. She flew because someone had to. Because every enemy ship she killed was one less threat to her home. She had been born on Europa. Every day it held was personal. Dr. Hana worked miracles in her lab. The sonic weapons improved constantly. She found new frequencies, new delivery methods, new ways to hurt the swarm. Other scientists called her obsessed. She called it focused. The Veskari were a puzzle, and she refused to stop until she solved them completely. Beyond human space, the galaxy watched. Every species in exile received regular broadcasts from Earth. Some ignored them. Others watched with growing fascination. A few started to feel something they had not expected. Shame. Ambassador Theron studied the battle reports daily. He had led his people to safety. They were secure in dark space, waiting for the swarm to pass. But security felt less comfortable with each passing week. The Keltharians were ancient and wise. They had survived every threat through caution and preparation. But watching humanity fight made their wisdom feel like cowardice. Young Keltharians began to speak up. Should we not help them, they asked. Should we not stand with those who stand alone? The elders had no good answers. We will survive, they said. That is what matters. But the young ones were not satisfied. Warlord Kryn's journey back to human space took months. His fleet moved carefully, avoiding Veskari patrols. He carried 50,000 warriors who had chosen honor over safety. They trained constantly during the journey, preparing for battles they knew would be their last. Kryn spent his time watching human combat footage. These people fought with a ferocity his warriors admired. They had no ancient warrior culture, no training from birth. But they had something else. They had nothing to lose and everything to fight for. That made them dangerous. Meanwhile, the Veskari queen grew obsessed. She was ancient beyond measure. A consciousness spread across thousands of organisms. She had consumed civilizations that humans could not imagine. Never had prey resisted so effectively. Never had a harvest taken so long. The queen devoted more resources to the human sectors. She designed new organisms specifically to counter human tactics. Warriors with armor resistant to sonic weapons. Hunters that could track stealth ships. Destroyers that moved faster than human vessels. The swarm adapted as it always did. But adaptation took time, and time was the one thing humans were stealing. Admiral Dae-hyun understood the situation clearly. They were losing. The mathematics were simple. The swarm had more ships, more resources, more everything. Human forces could not match them. But they could make every victory expensive. They could drag the war out. They could hope for a miracle. One night, exhausted and alone, Dae-hyun recorded a personal log. He spoke words he would never say publicly. Sometimes I wonder if I made the right choice. 300 billion humans have died since this war began. 300 billion. If we had evacuated, most would still be alive. Did my pride kill them? Will history remember me as the man who doomed humanity? He saved the log and forgot about it. But Captain Minji found it during a routine system check. She listened to his doubts, then went to find him. He was on the command deck studying sensor data. I heard your log, Minji said quietly. Dae-hyun closed his eyes. That was private, I know, and I am going to answer it anyway. You did not doom us. We chose this, all of us. Every person who voted to stay, who volunteered to fight, who picked up a weapon instead of running. We chose to stand. If we lose as ourselves. If we had run, we would have lost ourselves. You gave us that choice. Do not regret it now. The Admiral was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded. Thank you, Captain. Across human space, that determination burned. In every besieged colony, every damaged ship, every battered station, humans were not winning, but they were not breaking either. They adapted. They learned. They fought with the desperate creativity of people who had no other choice. The propaganda war mattered as much as the shooting war. Human broadcasts reached the exile fleets regularly. They showed victories and defeats honestly. They showed soldiers fighting and dying. They showed civilians adapting to war. Most importantly, they showed that humanity had not given up. More species began to question their choices. The Minari traders, who had fled to preserve their profits, started to feel uncomfortable. The predecessor archives, ancient repositories of knowledge, began to search for information that might help. Even the stubborn elder races started to wonder if survival without honor was worth it. And then Warlord Kryn arrived. His fleet emerged from jump space during the Battle of Mars. The Veskari had surrounded the Red Planet, preparing for a final assault. Human defenders were outnumbered 10-1. It looked like the end. Then sensors detected new contacts, ships that were not human, ships that were not Veskari. 50,000 Draknari warriors in full battle formation. Weapons hot, shields up. Kryn broadcast on all channels. His voice was rough with shame and determination. Humans of Earth, we fled when we should have stayed. We ran when we should have fought. We have come to correct that mistake. If you will have us, we stand with you now. Until victory or death, Admiral Dae-hyun responded immediately. Welcome to the war, Warlord. We could use the help. All ships coordinate with our new allies. Let us show the swarm what two species can do together. The Battle of Mars lasted 12 hours. Human tactics combined with Draknari ferocity created devastation the Veskari had not experienced. The swarm lost over 300 bioships. Mars was saved. And for the first time since the war began, humanity was not alone. The Long War was about to become something else. Something the Veskari Queen had never faced. A coalition. An alliance. A galaxy that finally remembered how to fight back. The arrival of the Draknari changed everything. 50,000 warriors joined the human defense, bringing weapons and ships that had been designed for war. Where humans fought with clever tactics and improvised weapons, the Draknari brought raw military power. Together they were formidable. Warlord Kryn met Admiral Daehyun in person 3 days after the Battle of Mars. The Draknari leader was massive, nearly 7 feet tall, with scales that looked like armor. But his eyes showed genuine respect when he faced the human admiral. "I have watched you fight for 2 years," Kryn said. "I have seen your tactics, your courage, your refusal to surrender. It shames me that my people ran while you stood." Daehyun shook his head. "There is no shame in survival, Warlord, but there is honor in returning. You are here now. That is what matters." They spent hours planning joint operations, human intelligence and Draknari strength, human sonic weapons and Draknari plasma cannons, 2 species that had barely known each other before the war, now learning to fight as one. But the Draknari were only the first. Within weeks, more ships arrived. The Keltharians sent science vessels with advanced sensors and weapons. The Minari contributed support ships and logistics expertise. Species that had fled in fear returned in determination. The coalition grew. Ambassador Theron led the diplomatic efforts. The old Keltharian organized the coalition, established command structures, coordinated resources. He had spent decades advocating caution and retreat. Now he worked tirelessly to unite species that had never cooperated before. Dr. Hana found herself collaborating with alien scientists. They brought knowledge humanity lacked. Together they improved the sonic weapons dramatically. The new models worked at longer range with greater power. They could be mounted on Draknari warships or Keltharian cruisers just as easily as human vessels. Technology was only part of it. The real change was psychological. For 3 years, humanity had fought alone. Now they had allies. Hope, which had been dying slowly, burned bright again. The United Galactic Defense Force was established with Admiral Daehyun as Supreme Commander. Not because he demanded it, but because every species agreed. The human had led the fight from the beginning. He understood the enemy better than anyone. It made sense to follow his lead. Operation Daybreak was the coalition's first major offensive. For 3 years, humans had fought defensively, trading space for time. Now they would attack. Captain Minji coordinated the multi-species fleet, translating Daehyun's strategies into orders that Draknari warriors and Keltharian captains could both understand. The target was a Veskari stronghold in the former human colonies. 3 bioships controlled the sector, directing swarms of smaller organisms. Take them out and dozens of worlds could be reclaimed. Lieutenant Jiwon led combined fighter wings. Human pilots flew alongside Draknari aces. They trusted each other because they had no choice. The mission was too important for pride or hesitation. The battle was brutal. The Veskari had 3 years to fortify their positions. They met the coalition fleet with thousands of defenders. But for the first time, they faced an enemy with matching numbers and superior tactics. Human strategy, Draknari firepower, and Keltharian technology created a combination the swarm could not counter. All 3 bioships were destroyed. The sector was reclaimed. New Horizon, where the invasion had begun 3 years ago, was freed. The victory was costly. The coalition lost 15% of its fleet, but they had proven something crucial. The Veskari could be beaten. The Veskari Queen felt rage for the first time in millennia. These creatures had destroyed her forces. Worse, they had organized. Other prey was joining the humans. This was unprecedented, unacceptable. She would crush them personally. The Queen gathered her reserves. Elite organisms she had kept in deep space waiting to be needed. Bioships larger and more dangerous than anything seen before. She pointed them at one target, Earth, the human homeworld. Destroy that and the resistance would crumble. Sensors detected the massive fleet 2 weeks before it arrived. Thousands of Veskari ships led by organisms the size of moons. Daehyun studied the projections and knew immediately. This was the real battle. Everything before had been a prelude. He called an emergency council. Human leaders, Draknari warlords, Keltharian elders, all gathered via communication channels. The news was grim. The Queen herself was coming, and she was bringing enough force to sterilize Earth completely. "We cannot evacuate," Daehyun said flatly. "There is no time. We have 2 weeks to prepare Earth's defenses. We will use everything we have. Every ship, every weapon, every soldier. If they want Earth, they will have to take it from us 1 meter at a time. The coalition mobilized completely. Every available ship jumped to Earth's defense. Orbital platforms were reinforced. Ground defenses were tripled. Sergeant Borum coordinated planetary defense from Beijing, the last major city with intact military infrastructure. She had 50 million soldiers under her command. Human, Draknari, Keltharian, and a dozen other species, all ready to fight. Dr. Hana worked on one final weapon, a resonance generator that could blanket the entire planet. If it worked, it would destroy every Veskari organism on Earth instantly. The risk was enormous. The device might damage Earth's biosphere permanently, but they were out of options. The Veskari arrived like a nightmare. Their fleet blocked out the sun. Massive bioships descended toward Earth, while smaller organisms swarmed the orbital defenses. The Battle of Terra began with a fury that made previous battles look like skirmishes. Captain Minji commanded the orbital fleet from the Indomitable. Her ships fought in perfect formation, human and alien crews working as one. They inflicted terrible casualties on the swarm, but the enemy kept coming. For every bioship destroyed, 3 more took its place. Warlord Kryn led the defense of Siberia. Draknari warriors held the frozen wastes against wave after wave of Veskari ground organisms. They fought with the fury of warriors who had found their honor again. Kryn himself killed hundreds of enemies, his plasma blade cutting through biomatter like it was nothing. Sergeant Borum defended Beijing. The city was the last major stronghold, protected by layers of defenses and millions of soldiers. Veskari forces surrounded it completely, but every street became a battlefield. Every building became a fortress. The enemy would not take Beijing easily. Admiral Daehyun commanded from his flagship in orbit. The ship had taken heavy damage. Life support was failing, but he refused to evacuate. From here, he could coordinate the entire defense, see everything, react to threats. His crew stayed with him without question. The battle raged for 72 hours. No sleep, no rest. Just constant fighting, casualties mounted into the millions. Ships burned in orbit. Cities fell on the surface. But Earth held, barely, desperately. But it held. On the 3rd day, Dr. Hana completed the resonance weapon. She contacted Daehyun directly. "It is ready," she said. "But if we use it, there could be consequences. The frequency might affect Earth's magnetic field, might cause permanent damage to the ecosystem." Daehyun did not hesitate. "Activate it. A damaged Earth is better than no Earth at all." The weapon powered up. It took 5 minutes to reach full charge. 5 minutes that felt like hours. Then Dr. Hana pressed the activation button. A wave of resonance energy pulsed across the planet, moving at the speed of sound amplified by Earth's own electromagnetic field. Every Veskari organism on Earth died instantly. Millions of tons of biomatter simply stopped working, falling dead where they stood. The ground forces stared in amazement as their enemies collapsed. The siege of Beijing ended in seconds. The attack on Siberia halted mid-charge. In orbit, the bioships fled. The Queen's consciousness felt the loss of her ground forces. Felt pain, real pain. For the first time in her ancient existence, she understood fear. These prey had hurt her. Really hurt her. The Veskari fleet retreated. Earth was saved. But the Admiral knew this was not over. The Queen would return, next time with even more force. They had won the battle, but the war continued. Daehyun looked at his battered crew, at the damaged ships around him, at Earth scarred but alive below. They had survived. Against impossible odds, they had survived. And now they were not alone. Now they had allies. Now they had hope. The next phase of the war would not be defensive. It would be offensive. They would take the fight to the Queen herself. They would end this one way or another. 4 years since the invasion began, the coalition controlled 1/3 of previously lost territory. The war had reached a turning point. Humanity and its allies were no longer just surviving. They were winning. But everyone knew the final battle was coming. Dr. Hana made the crucial discovery in her 4th year of research. She had been studying the pattern of Veskari attacks, the way their forces moved, the coordination between different organisms. All of it pointed to one source: the Queen. A massive consciousness at the galactic rim controlling everything. Kill the Queen and the swarm would collapse. It was that simple and that difficult. The Coalition War Council met on Harmony 7, the neutral station that had once hosted the galaxy's evacuation planning. Now it hosted planning for the largest military operation in galactic history. Representatives from 30 species gathered around holographic displays showing the Queen's location. Admiral Daehyun stood at the center. 4 years of war had aged him terribly, but his mind was sharp as ever. The plan was straightforward. Gather every ship they could spare. Jump to the galactic rim. Find the Queen. Kill her. It is suicide, Ambassador Theron said quietly. We will lose most of our fleet. Daehyun nodded, yes, but if we succeed, we end the war. If we do nothing, we die slowly. I prefer to die quickly with a chance of victory. Warlord Kryn slammed his fist on the table. The Draknari agree. We will fight, one by one. Every species voted. Some reluctantly, some eagerly, but all agreed. The assault would happen. They would stake everything on one final battle. The Armada assembled over 3 months. 1,000 warships from 30 species, the largest fleet ever gathered. Human carriers alongside Draknari battlecruisers. Keltharian science vessels equipped with weapons. Minari logistics ships carrying supplies for the long journey. Admiral Daehyun was given supreme command, not because he was the best strategist, though he was, not because he had won the most battles, though he had, but because he had never stopped fighting. When everyone else ran, he stood. That meant something. The journey to the galactic rim took 6 months. They fought every light year. The Veskari did not make it easy. Bioships contested each system. The Coalition lost ships daily to ambushes and skirmishes, but they kept moving forward. Lieutenant Jiwon's Ghost Squadron flew constant reconnaissance. They mapped safe routes, identified threats, cleared paths for the main fleet. It was dangerous work. Jiwon lost half her pilots before they reached the rim, but she kept flying. Someone had to lead. Captain Minji commanded the vanguard. Her ships took the worst of the fighting. The Indomitable had been repaired so many times that half of it was replacement parts, but it still flew, still fought. Minji refused to give it up. This ship had carried her through the entire war. It would carry her to the end. By the time they reached the galactic rim, the fleet had been reduced to 600 ships, 40% losses, but those who remained were veterans, survivors, warriors who had learned to fight the Veskari and win. The Queen's stronghold hung in space like a cancer, a biostructure the size of a planet, pulsing with dark energy. Thousands of bioships orbited it. Millions of organisms defended it. This was where the swarm began. This was where it would end. Daehyun broadcast to the entire fleet. 4 years ago, humanity stood alone against impossible odds. We refused to run. We refused to die. You joined us. You stood with us. Together, we have fought across 100 worlds. Today we fight one last time. Today we end this. The battle began with a coordinated assault from 3 directions. Captain Minji led the space fleet against orbital defenses. Warlord Kryn commanded ground forces preparing to board the structure. Sergeant Borum coordinated landing zones, her experience from 4 years of ground combat invaluable. The Veskari defended with everything they had. Bioships swarmed like insects. Organic weapons fired from every surface. The Queen herself could be felt, a massive presence pressing down on every mind. She was ancient. She was powerful. And she was very, very angry. The Coalition fleet pushed forward. Ships died by the dozens, but they kept coming. Human tactics learned through years of desperate fighting. Draknari courage rediscovered through shame and redemption. Keltharian technology, finally put to proper use. Together they were unstoppable. Warlord Kryn's ground forces breached the structure's outer shell. They fought through corridors of living flesh using flame and sonic weapons to clear paths. Every meter was paid in blood. But they advanced, slowly, inevitably. Admiral Daehyun watched the battle from his flagship. The old ship had taken terrible damage. Hull breaches on every deck. Life support failing. Most of the crew was dead, but the command center still functioned. He could still coordinate the assault, then he saw it. A pattern in the Queen's defenses. A weakness. If they could get past the outer ring of bioships, there was a direct approach to her core. But it would require a ship to ram through, a suicide run. Daehyun looked at his remaining crew. 5 people, 5 out of a complement of 300. They had stayed when they could have evacuated. Stayed because he asked them to. He would not order them to die. We are going in, he said quietly. If anyone wants to leave, the escape pods are ready. No shame, no one moved. The navigator spoke for all of them. We stay, Admiral. Until the end. Daehyun broadcast one final message. All ships, This is the Admiral. I am taking my flagship into the Queen's core. Dr. Hana, your resonance weapon is aboard. Detonate it when we reach the target. To everyone who has fought beside us these 4 years, human and alien alike, it has been an honor. Captain Minji, you have command. Finish this war. The flagship accelerated. Engines pushed beyond safety limits. The hull groaned under the stress. Veskari weapons tore into them from every direction. But they kept going. Past the outer defenses, through the orbital ring, into the structure itself. The Queen's presence grew overwhelming. Daehyun felt her consciousness pressing against his mind. She was afraid. For the first time in millions of years, she felt genuine fear. This prey had learned to hunt the hunter. The flagship crashed into the Queen's central chamber. Alarms screamed. Systems failed. But Dr. Hana's weapon was intact. Daehyun activated it with the last of the ship's power. Then he leaned back in his chair and smiled. "We will not run," he whispered. "We will not hide. We will win." The resonance weapon detonated at point-blank range. The frequency tore through the Queen's consciousness, shattering it into a million pieces. Her death scream echoed across subspace, reaching every corner of the galaxy, and then silence. The Veskari swarm collapsed. Without the Queen's control, bioships stopped moving. Ground organisms fell dormant. Some fled into deep space. Others simply died. The invasion that had threatened the entire galaxy ended in one moment. Captain Minji stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching the enemy fade away. She had fought beside Daehyun for 15 years. He had been her mentor, her commander, her friend. Now he was gone. But his final order remained. Finish the war. The coalition fleet regrouped. They had lost 400 ships, millions of soldiers, but they had won. The Veskari swarm was broken. The galaxy was saved. The journey home took months. They reclaimed worlds as they went, found survivors who had hidden during the occupation, began the long process of rebuilding. Human casualties totaled 180 billion, nearly half the species. But humanity survived. The Galactic Council reformed with humanity as a permanent member. No one questioned their right. They had earned it in blood and fire. Ambassador Theron proposed the Galactic Defense Pact. Never again would species face extinction alone. Never again would they run from existential threats. Warlord Kryn established a warrior exchange program between Draknari and humans. His people would teach humans their ancient combat arts. Humans would teach Draknari their adaptive tactics. Both species had learned that courage meant nothing without wisdom, and wisdom meant nothing without courage. On Earth, monuments rose to honor the fallen. Admiral Daehyun's name was carved first, then the billions who had died defending their home. Humans had lost half their population, but the other half had survived, and they had proven something important. Sometimes the right choice is not the smart choice. Sometimes you stand even when standing means dying. Because some things are worth more than survival. Home is worth fighting for, freedom is worth dying for, and courage, real courage, can inspire an entire galaxy. Years later, Captain Minji visited Daehyun's monument. She was an admiral now, commanding the reformed United Earth Defense Fleet. She touched the cold stone and remembered her mentor's words. "We will not run. We will not hide." Behind her, construction crews rebuilt Beijing. Colonists returned to Mars. Life continued. Humanity had survived by refusing to surrender. And the galaxy had learned that sometimes the youngest species has the most important lessons to teach. The war was over. The cost had been terrible. But humanity had stood when everyone else ran. And in the end, that made all the difference.